other side, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the News Hour tonight is Vikram Sampath, author and the man who's decoding Tipu Sultan. Why he should be loved or hated. Joining me tonight on the News Hour is a very special guest, a man who's been just so prolific that I've lost count of the number of books he's written in the last 20 months or so. Thank you very much, Vikram Sampath, for joining me. You've been on a very prolific spree, from a 2-volume biography of Veer Savarkar, followed by Bravehearts of Bharat, then the book on the Gyanvapi issue and Kashi Vishwanath issue, Waiting for Shiva, and now this voluminous book, Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan, 890 pages of it. Vikram Sampath, what drove you to research, explore this personality of Indian history called Tipu Sultan?
Thank you, Navika. It's always such a pleasure to have the first conversation around any of my new books with you. So you're certainly the lucky charm for all my books, I must say. So this book actually, I mean, it was in the making in my head for almost 15, 16 years. Quite ironically, I owe my literary career, my journey into historiography to Tipu Sultan. I was a boy of 12 or 13 years of age when that very famous serial on Tipu Sultan in Doordarshan those days, called The Sword of Tipu Sultan, was coming, which was produced by Sanjay Khan. Yeah. And if you remember in that, the Mysore royal, the Mysore royal family was shown in a very, very poor light. The Maharaja was shown like this obese retard who was dancing along with the court dancer. The Maharani, one of those typical vamps, always conniving and conspiring against Tipu. Now, about that, there were lots of protests in different parts of Karnataka, which still holds the Vodiyar, dynasty in a lot of regard and reverence. Now, as a young teenager who actually hated history in school, this was something that really, kindled my interest and curiosity. And for almost 10 years thereafter, the Mysore bug had bitten me, with no connection or family connection to Mysore. Every vacation meant going there, researching about initially only that one king and queen. And then the interest expanded to the entire dynasty of the Vodiyars. And that's how in 2008, quite serendipitously, my first book, Splendors of Royal Mysore, The Untold Story of the Vodiyars, came out. One particular section of that was on the Interregnum period, the intermission, where about 40 years the kingdom was usurped by Hyder Ali and then his son Tipu Sultan. That particular period piqued a lot of interest in my mind, and I wanted to research further. I wanted to write a book on Tipu right then.
And that's when you strayed into the politics of Tipu Sultan? I realized that this is such a landmine, and his weaponization by politicians of all hues makes him so polarizing. In fact, the lecture was shouted down, I was ushered inside, and there was somebody, some Tipu admirer who came and thrust a letter into my father's hands then, saying, you have an only son and please ask him to mind his words if you want him around you for long. And a few weeks later, an effigy of mine was burnt right in the heart of Bangalore for an article I had written which had references to Tipu. So at that time, my mother had made me take a oath that I will never talk about Tipu Sultan in public. I kept up my promise to her till the time she was alive. And so after we unfortunately lost her 6-7 years ago, that's when I had the gumption to bring this out in print, with the hope and prayer that from whichever heaven she's sitting in, she will protect me against any such unwarranted bigotry and hatred that might come up after this book is out. So let me ask you, Vikram Sampath, the Congress has politicized Tipu Sultan as much as possibly the BJP has. The Congress wanted to glorify him, the BJP wanted to deride him, both probably playing to the galleries for their own political objectives. How have you interpreted
Tipu Sultan, away from how politics has looked at it?
You're absolutely right, Navika. I think both parties and all political parties use historical personages for their political capital and milking them for their advantage. The Congress, if you remember, the whole fracas began in 2014 when Republic Day float in New Delhi sent by the then Siddaramaiah government had Tipu Sultan representing the state, and that caused a lot of angst in the state. And a year later you had this Tipu Jayanti that was celebrated. Under section 144 had to be imposed in the state to actually celebrate it. You had two people who were killed in police firing in Madikeri in Coorg. The politics apart, there were citizens groups, Christian organizations, the Kodavas in Coorg, the Mangalore Christians, all of them opposing the celebration of this Jayanti. So the Congress had a very fixed point on this, but the BJP was no different. I mean, in the run-up to the 2023 state elections, you had this crazy, story built up about a Gauda, chieftains, Uri Gauda and Nanje Gauda, who they claimed were the ones who killed Tipu and not the British. Now, this was only to get the Vokkaliga vote in South Karnataka, and it was finally the Vokkaliga Swamiji who asked them not to drag the name of their community into their dirty politics.
Well, so Vikram Sampath, you write in the book, glossing over Tipu's cruelties and barbaric deeds only to sound politically correct or labor under a sad misapprehension that whitewashing these crimes would somehow magically maintain social cohesion and national unity is being extremely treacherous and intellectually dishonest. At the same time, erasing some redeeming features of his character and life is also being disingenuous with history. Having read the book, Vikram, on the balance, there is a bloody legacy, his intolerance, his religious bigotry, his persecution of Christians and Hindus. Can you take our viewers through how Tipu Sultan can best be described in terms of the legacy that he's left behind?
So Tipu, Navika, ruled for about 17 years, all of 17 years, from 1782 to 1799. He got the kingdom on a platter from his father. His father, Hyder Ali, had to really work his way up the political ladders of Mysore. Machiavellian, conniving, really a politician, like a politician of today. And in 12 years of being bought by the Maharaja, and who helped pay off a ransom that his father owed and took Hyder into the Mysorean service, in just 12 years he managed to usurp and overthrow his own benefactor's throne. So that was it's a very interesting story in itself. But his son got everything on a platter. There was nothing that he had to work hard for. And the first 5 years of his rule, immediately after Hyder's death, were splendid for Tipu Sultan. So, he concluded the Second Mysore War on a very good high. The Treaty of Mangalore, which was probably the last document that the British, had to sign humiliating terms of when it came to an Indian power. He managed to vanquish the Marathas in several skirmishes thereafter, the Treaty of Gajendragarh and so on, where he had an upper hand. A lot of these rebellions in Coorg and Malabar and all that, which was constantly on the rise, he managed to quell all that. Internal uprisings from his own family and also the displaced Hindu royal family, he managed to quell that as well and establish himself as an undisputed supreme dictator of Mysore. But after these 5 years, that led him to such a kind of hubris and an arrogance and an intoxication of power. And it's almost like a Greek tragedy that one sees his life thereafter, where he almost assumed supernatural powers to himself.
His end, as you describe in the book, was also very brutal. And he fell fighting the British. Can you share with our viewers what your research showed about his brutal end?
Yeah, that was quite a poignant end that he has, where the enemy is at the doors of Srirangapatna. They have encircled it. He tries his very best to ward them off, but it's a huge army which Richard Wellesley, the Governor General, sends across to Mysore with the clear intention of the kill, no longer giving him another lease of life like Cornwallis had.
And even at that time, several of his people tell him, like Hyder once, when there was a palace coup, he managed to escape and regroup and come back and fight to live on another day. So they asked him to do the same. There is a lot of documentation around the fact that he actually agreed to that, and he was actually planning to shift his family and run away himself too, through the only kind of surang that was there in the fort, a tunnel, secret passage. But there were traitors within, Mir Sadiq, Mir Nadeem, some say even Purnaya, his diwan. All of these people ensured that that only passage of escape was also closed, and he had nowhere to go. And so he decided that it's the best is to go and fight, knowing pretty well that it was a hopeless battle that he was fighting. And he was wearing these bejeweled, brooches and armlets and all of that, and seeing that, one of the British soldiers actually strikes on him to take away this ornament, not realizing that he was actually attacking the Sultan of Mysore, because no one expected him to be there on the ground that way. So the British, his own family, they're all devastated. They don't even know where this man is at, sunset. And a search party then goes around the ramparts of hell that Srirangapatna had become, putrid bodies, vultures already, encircling the place. And there, amidst a heap of dead bodies, from the, his hand and the clasp of the sword that was there, that's how they managed to identify him and bring his body out, and he's then given a ceremonial, funeral.
You've always referred to Tipu Sultan as an enigma before you wrote this book. Today, are you glad the practice of commemorating Tipu Jayanti has stopped, and do you think violence and the brutality of his rule is something that people will remember and recognize?
I really hope so, Navika. I mean, as I said, this perverse practice of actually creating icons or whitewashing crimes of, barbaric rulers like this, just to make them palatable and acceptable to a certain community, I think that is extremely dangerous. And it should not be something that, it's a wishful thinking. Politicians will always fish in these troubled waters. But Tipu Jayanti, if after knowing the truth of this man and the kind of atrocities that he heaped, which, as I said, it's not something that was 250 years ago and nobody remembers it, whose memory and intergenerational trauma still lasts for people today, it is still okay if a group of private individuals, a Tipu fan club or something, and they commemorate that. That also is actually quite bad to be doing. If they commemorate his birth date or death date or whatever, that is still a little acceptable. But for a democratically elected government, to actually use taxpayers' money to actually commemorate such a person, when large groups of your own state, even to this day, are protesting against his memories, you have to impose section 144 where more than 4 people cannot assemble, and then celebrate the birth anniversary. What kind of celebration is this, and for whom is this? So I think in 1947, when we turned our backs on princely states and actually decided to become a republican, modern, democratic nation, commemorating people like this, particularly if they were at least good sovereigns, it is something that you can commemorate, say Devi Ahilyabai Holkar or somebody like that, whose welfare measures are there to see even to this day. Commemorating such people is still fine, but to make heroes of people like this only because he had visceral hatred for the British, I don't know if having hatred is one, having the tact to defeat them is another, which he did not have. So I think a very realistic assessment needs to be done of which characters of the past we are going to make holy cows out of, and almost put them on a pedestal where no one can actually touch them or assess their very, very troubled legacy.
I think you deserve congratulations. Thank you very much, Vikram Sampath, for joining me, and many, many congratulations to you for this extremely hard piece of work that you've done in researching Tipu Sultan.
Thank you, Navika. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. And as I said, you are the lucky charm for most of my books.
I hope I stay that way, because unlike Tipu Sultan, who was, completely surrounded by all kinds of paranoia, you don't get surrounded very soon. So, lucky charm or not, good wishes coming your way.
Thank you, Navika. Thank you, and happy Deepavali to you and to all the viewers of Times Now.
Thank you very much, and to you, all your near and dear ones, and of course our viewers, a very happy Diwali.